Of course, in the coming hours and beyond, Israel is going to have to make some important strategic decisions.
Yeah, that security cabinet meeting happening as we speak.
That's right. And joining us in the studio is someone with broad experience in that field. Dr. Chuck Freilich is the former Deputy National Security Advisor, and he is the author of the book Israeli National Security, A New Strategy for an Era of Change. Chuck, thank you for joining us. Let's just start even just the decision that the Security Cabinet has to make in the coming hours. Does it accept or try to see through this truce agreement that was negotiated via the mediation of Egypt and the United Nations, or does it try to accelerate its military program in Gaza?
Well, I don't know what they're going to decide in the coming minutes or hours.
What would you advise?
Look, there's a fundamental problem here, and it's a painful reality that we don't like to acknowledge. But there are no major military steps that we can take that we haven't taken in the past. The IDF has pretty much used up the toolbox of military measures. We can attack another target here and there, and we can up the pressure a little bit. But there are really two choices or three choices. One is to keep playing this game of periodic periods of heating up and try and avoid an all-out war. And the alternative is an all-out war. It's to go in and occupy Gaza, in the course of which we are going to lose hundreds of guys. And what's the end result going to be? Well, we can stay in Gaza, which nobody wants to do, and that will be extraordinarily bloody. Or sooner or later, we're going to withdraw. And then we're going to be exactly where we are today. Hamas, somebody else will be in power. The rockets will start within a short order. It's not a solution. And that's why this government, the previous government, right-wing governments, left-wing governments, no one has wanted to go in and solve the problem like some people on the right have been arguing for, or the hawkish camp. This isn't a matter of right or left. There's no military solution here. So I think the hope will be, and we've seen the government's behavior in the last couple of weeks, because it didn't start in the last 24 hours, the hope will be that we can reach some sort of political arrangement, I don't want to call it a settlement, which will give us some more temporary quiet.
Before we get to the ceasefire being weighed, I want to stop on the conflict element, because we've heard just in the last 24 hours some sort of statements, if you could call it bluster, maybe not, maybe, speaking truth, but from the Israeli military chief of staff saying we are more prepared than we've been in 20 years. All options are on the table. It sounds like what we have heard in past conflicts. What do you think has prevented a new strategy like you're suggesting is needed until now?
Well, I don't think what I'm saying is a new strategy. I think it's exactly what Israel has been doing for the last decade. When we've had no choice, we've gone in, launched an operation, we've brought a short period of quiet, and things...
A continuing cycle.
Right, and that's where we are today, I think, as well. The IDF can't come out and say, well, there's nothing we can do, okay? They can't say that. The government can't say that. What maybe they could do, and this would be a new strategy, is try and tell people, look, we have to bite down hard. We've gone through things that are much, much worse in the past. And remember, the people in the north went through a similar and even actually a much worse situation for a number of decades. And people in the south, back in our older history in the 50s and 60s, went through a situation which was in many ways worse. And we're going to have to face this, unfortunately, for a long time to come.
Chuck, there are some differences between some of the past conflicts we've had. Maybe they're external. The U.S. administration, unlike under the Obama administration now, is not rushing to putting pressure on Israel, for example, to halt its military offensive. The Palestinian Authority, which, despite its split with Hamas, came out strong, condemning Israeli actions, has been much more subdued here. Does this, do these changes at least point to maybe some options that weren't available before?
And let me strengthen the case you're saying. Egypt is at least as anti-Hamas as we are, and has been doing its best to try and bring around some sort of arrangement which will be along the kind of lines that we would like. It doesn't matter. We don't have a military solution to this at a price that we want to pay. As a matter of fact, the military solution, quote unquote, is infinitely worse from our point of view in terms of loss of life than the current situation. Look, we've had three problems with Hamas in recent months. And they've all, from their point of view, they've all failed or are failing. One is the issue of the border demonstrations. We stopped them from doing that. we're taking away their tunnel capability. The rockets haven't forced us to cave in any way. Hamas is actually in a situation of overwhelming weakness. It's hard for us to say that and understand that in the heat of what's happening. But Hamas is in really deep trouble today. They're trying to maybe break out of their trouble through this escalation, but they don't want to go to a war.
Why not strike a deal at exactly that time when Hamas is isolated?
I'm for it. And the question is whether we can reach it. I think the government is for it. That's why they've been trying to do it for the last couple of weeks. 48 hours ago, most of the news reporting was saying, oh, we're about to reach an agreement.
Chuck, I want to ask you about the process to reaching that. Over the last few days here in the studio, we've been talking to both senior former Israeli officials and Palestinian officials. We keep hearing that Israel is starting to deal directly with Hamas, having communication with Hamas, and cutting the Palestinian Authority out. What's your take on that kind of policy? Is that dangerous or maybe a new way through?
Look, there's a fundamental problem here. Do you talk to a terrorist organization, one which calls for Israel's liquidation, a genocidal organization? And on a simple moral level, I think the answer would be no. On the other hand, the Yishuv, the pre-state community, spoke to the Nazis to try and save Jews. We spoke to the Egyptians, the Syrians, who had infinitely more Israeli blood on their hand than Hamas will ever have. So do I like the thought of talking to them? Absolutely not. Does it weaken our potential Palestinian partner, the PA? Yes. Is that a problem? Yeah. On the other hand, if we want to end these repeated cycles...
So just to be clear, you are advocating, or at least not opposing, direct talks with Hamas without them accepting some of the preconditions that Israel has put on?
Well, first of all, I didn't say I'm for it. I'm saying that I wouldn't be totally against it. I don't think it's a big deal. I think, yeah, there are some preconditions, and I don't think there's any reason that we can't continue these so-called indirect talks, which were pretty direct anyway.
Why is this Israeli government not taking action to strengthen Abbas, to strengthen the West Bank government?
Because this Israeli government does not want to reach a peace agreement with the Palestinians on any conditions which are vaguely acceptable to the Palestinians. If it's totally in our conditions, okay, but that's not realistic. And the situation that's existed in recent years in which there's been the split between Gaza and the West Bank, which weakens the Palestinians in general, was quite convenient for them.
All right, Dr. Chuck Freilich, pleasure to have you here.